we broke down all of the NFL to start off the first hour of the program. I wanted to talk some about college football because I am obviously a massive college football fan, and we now have our matchup set for the national title game. Alabama going up against Ohio State down in Miami a week from today. And while neither of the games ended up being particularly close, I feel like they were not close in ways that we did not anticipate. Alabama effectively dominated Notre Dame, right? They came out, they got up 14-0. I think it was 21-7 at the half. There was never any point in time where you really felt like Notre Dame was a legitimate threat to win that football game. And I thought even Alabama took their foot off the gas a little bit late. Credit to Notre Dame for being able to keep from it being a total disaster. The last time Alabama and Notre Dame played, it was 35-0 before Notre Dame hardly had a chance to even know what had hit them. And the game was over, and A.J. McCarron's girlfriend, Catherine Webb, I think was her name. Am I getting that right? I can't even remember exactly what her name was now. But she became the celebrity instead of anything associated with the game itself. So Notre Dame was a little bit closer there, but the Alabama Crimson Tide, I mean, think about this for a minute. Alabama is now 12-0. They have 11 SEC wins, and they have now beaten a 10-win team in Notre Dame. They are trending towards, if they were to beat Ohio State, being one of the best teams that's ever existed in the history of college football. And they are so explosive at wide receiver. I was tweeting about this a little bit during the game on Saturday. I want you to think about this for a minute. Alabama could theoretically have Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Devontae Smith, who I think is going to win the Heisman Trophy, and Jalen Waddle, all at wide receiver this year, which would be, and they had them last year, but that is arguably the best wide receiving core that has ever existed. Because there's no NFL team that has ever had 4 first-round wide receivers. This is pretty crazy to think about. The amount of talent that would represent is pretty much off the charts. And so as you kind of break down everything in that universe, I think it's worth sitting around and asking this question. How much of Alabama's success in the passing game is a function of the wide receivers as opposed to the quarterbacks? And I think there are probably some Dolphin fans sitting around and asking that question after the first year with Tua. Now, I love Tua. I think he makes big-time plays. But has the Alabama offense looked that much different with Mac Jones at the helm than it looked with Tua? I don't think the answer is that it's looked very different at all. Now, maybe a lot of that credit goes to Steve Sarkisian, and there may be a little bit of drama associated with Steve Sarkisian in terms of how exactly the Alabama offense performs now that he has taken the Texas job. And oh, by the way, how crazy was that? How crazy was it that all of a sudden Texas, after they have come out and said, hey, this is our guy, we're going to decide to stick with Tom Herman after all the flirting with Urban Meyer, they then, out of nowhere really, suddenly make the move to give their program over to Steve Sarkisian and just say Tom Herman's era is over at Texas. And how about Alabama now as the home for wayward coaches? You want to get rehabilitated, whether you're Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian, Butch Jones, or you want to get an opportunity, Kirby Smart, Derek Dooley. I mean, you run through basically the entirety of the list of coaches that Alabama has had, and almost all of them end up getting opportunities to be head coaches themselves. It's really pretty extraordinary to think about the extent to which Nick Saban is the developmental arm for so many different head coaches out there in college football. In fact, if anything, I think we are drastically underselling the level of dominance that Nick Saban has represented at Alabama. We've just gotten so used to it. I want you to think about this for a minute. Nick Saban, 14th year at Alabama. He has won 5 national championships already, with now his team playing for a 6th national championship. He has won 9 SEC titles, had 33 players drafted in the first round, with a bunch more coming in this year's NFL draft, and has now had 12 assistants hired as an FBS head coach. That's from Field Yates. He put all that together. I'm reading from his tweet. That's pretty unbelievable. The level of dominance that Nick Saban has come to represent at Alabama, I don't believe will ever be equaled anywhere on any level. And the craziest stat to me, and this is a stat that I think beyond a shadow of a doubt is never going to be equaled anywhere, at some point in the time in each season, starting in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. At some point in each of those football seasons, Nick Saban's team has been ranked number one in the country. Either at the end of the year, either at the beginning of the year, either at the middle part of the year. That level of sustained excellence is unheard of. I don't think we're ever going to see the equal of it again. And so I don't know how many more years Nick Saban is going to coach at Alabama, but what is amazing about Nick Saban to me, and what speaks so well of his coaching ability, is a lot of coaches figure out how to do something and they can never adjust and change the way that they coach. Nick Saban, if you go back and look at the early years when he was winning national championships, it was based on having incredible defenses that almost anaconda style choked out the ability of the offense to do anything. Now, he has pivoted and let Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian and all of these guys run the offense in such a way that they're trying to score 50 points and the pace of the game is entirely different. And so you can just look at the SEC title game that Saban won 52-46 and say, this is a guy who has recognized that he's going to have to evolve the way he coaches, and you can't win games in major college football, at least not consistently, 31-10 anymore. Now, you may be occasionally able to do it. You may be occasionally able to win 28-17. But nowadays, you have to be able to score 50. It's a little bit like basketball. I always like to say when you make your NCAA tournament picks, I always like to pick a team that has the ability to win with 50 or has the ability to win with 80, right? They can beat you in a ball possession offensive game where there's almost no points that are going to be scored, where everybody's running the entire length of the shot clock, like the way UVA wins, or they can beat you in a run-and-gun Roy Williams style when he had his best teams at North Carolina, running up and down the court, getting as many possessions as possible. If you can win both of those style of games, your chances of winning the NCAA tournament are increased on a massive level. And it seems to me that is where sort of the storyline is going in college football, is that Nick Saban's level of dominance is not predicated on always winning the same way. In fact, he has changed things in a substantial level to put his team into a perspective where they can continue to win at such a high level. So if Alabama, that was all the question about, hey, what's going to happen with this season? How are we going to judge everybody? If Alabama goes out there and beats Ohio State to get to 13-0, I think there are going to be a lot of people, myself included, who argue that Alabama is as good as any team has ever been in the history of college football. Now, Ohio State went out and won a game that nobody anticipated them winning in that fashion. If they had won a shootout game and it had been close, I think people might not have been stunned beyond belief. But to dominate like they did against Clemson, I think they were down 14-7. They were down 7-0. After that, Justin Fields just was on fire, and he made himself a lot of money. In fact, and this may be crazy, but I'll be the first person to ask this question. If Urban Meyer ended up the coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, as there are rumors out there may occur, if that happened, is there any way that Urban Meyer could choose Justin Fields over Trevor Lawrence? We've seen quarterbacks, head coaches get hired and pick the quarterback that they decide best fits them. Maybe Trevor Lawrence is such an unquestionable number one overall pick that even Urban Meyer, with good relationships at Ohio State, he was at that game, he's going to know everything there is to possibly know about Justin Fields. maybe he's like, hey, Trevor Lawrence just projects so well in the NFL, I'm not even going to consider anybody else. But is it possible that he could consider Justin Fields? And did Justin Fields make himself so much money on Saturday in those performances? I guess it was Friday on New Year's Day. On those performances, is it possible, as you really break it down, that maybe the Jets are going to have to say, you know what, we can't pass up on Justin Fields. We've got to go and get him, even if it means trading Sam Darnold. Or if you're out there and you are the Miami Dolphins, how much might the Miami Dolphins be sitting around thinking, hey, we're fortunate, even though we choked against the Bills yesterday, even though we had a chance to get to the playoffs and we managed to choke away our opportunity there, how much might the Miami Dolphins be looking around saying, well, fortunately, the Texans ended up losing that game against the Titans. Thank you. And as a result, we're now going to feel a lot more comfortable about scaring people into thinking that we're going to draft a quarterback so that we can get real value here. Or maybe, look, the Arizona Cardinals changed everything. When they drafted Josh Rosen early and they moved on from him rapidly and they went and got Kyler Murray, that was a thing that never happened in the NFL. You never drafted a first-round quarterback and then the next year drafted another one. Well, look at what happened with Washington. Dwayne Haskins doesn't even finish 2 years with them. They're potentially going to be back in the quarterback marketplace again. Who knows what the Dallas Cowboys are going to do? There are a lot of moving parts here, to me, that Justin Fields made a lot more interesting going forward based on the performance that he put forth on that January 1st down in the Sugar Bowl. I mean, just an electric performance. And maybe some people are going to start to look at Trevor Lawrence and ask a question, how much of his dominance had to do with the fact that nobody else is even close to Clemson in the ACC? And he was just okay against LSU last year, and he was just okay against Ohio State this year. There are at least some questions about how exactly he's going to manage going forward. And I think it's interesting and worthy of debate now what exactly might end up happening in the NFL draft. But in the meantime, if you are an Ohio State Buckeye fan, and by the way, don't want to brag or draw attention to myself, but I fought harder for Big Ten football to happen than anybody in the sports media. New York Times had a big Sunday magazine article asking, was it worth it to play the college football season? Yeah, I think the answer was yes. 0 serious health issues for coaches, players, or anybody that went to fans in college football. It couldn't have gone any better. And now I think we have an iconic matchup that has to have a lot of people very, very excited, including me, for a week from now to be able to watch that game down in Miami.